Welcome to episode 303 of Sports Geek. On this week's episode, I chat with Scott O'Neill about leadership in sports and how sports is making a comeback.
Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host who can't wait to fly internationally to visit you, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. Yes, my name is Sean Callanan, and I really can't wait to fly internationally. Hopefully, I'll be able to get the vaccine soon, and travel restrictions will allow me to visit you in whatever part of the world you're in. You can find me on all things social at Sean Callanan or at Sports Geek. You can get all the episodes to Sports Geek podcasts on all your favourite podcast platforms. Mine is Pocket Casts. And if you can't find it anywhere else, you can go to sportsgeekhq.com. If you can't find it, really, please send me an email, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com, and say, where is the bloody podcast? Thank you. Welcome back. If you're listening to this episode for the first time, you didn't realise I've had a little bit of a break, but that's fine. But if you've been a listener for the many years, 300 odd episodes, you're probably wondering where I've been. Took a short break to recharge the batteries. But one of the things is travel, and it's sort of what DJ Joel said there in the top. Travel has been a really big part of me finding and sourcing new guests and meeting new people and finding interesting stories. I really am missing traveling to conferences, whether it be SEAT, whether it be South by Southwest, whether it be C2 in Montreal, or speaking at different conferences, because I get to meet new and interesting people, find out about new things, and so that has just, I've got to go back to the original plan of finding new guests, reaching out to the digital method, and using things like Zoom and SportsBiz Zoom calls and the things like that to find new people. So I am finding new people, and thank you to Lara, who set up this call with Scott O'Neill. It's been one that we've been trying to plan for a while around travel. But yeah, if you've got a colleague or someone that you think would make an interesting interview or a conversation, please let me know. I'd love to hear your nominations, whether they be someone doing some great work in digital, doing some great work marketing, introducing and installing new tech in stadiums or for teams. So I'll be reaching back to my Sports Geek podcast alumni and tapping them on the shoulder. And thank you to those who've already nominated and put forward some people, so that the guest pipeline is starting to fill out. So really do appreciate it. Before I get into today's episode with Scott O'Neill from Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment, just a quick note. More than happy to work with podcast listeners. And one thing that has been working quite well is the Pick My Brain sessions. They can be used how you want them to be used. Pick My Brain helps solve some problems, whether it's talking about your digital, talking about your content, reviewing your audiences, developing and refining your pitches to sponsors, looking at your membership campaigns, how you might refactor them as fans start coming back to stadiums, anything in that realm. If you want some help, book it in time, 2 hours. Easy to book, and it can be one-on-one. It can have a group. It can be a presentation to your team or a bit of a workshop. So go to sportsgeekhq.com/pickmybrain. And also, before I get in, thank you to everyone who's a Patreon subscriber. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon. They help pay for the hosting costs and the editing costs and everything around creating the sports business content, whether it be newsletters, the podcast, and the like. What I'm going to do is a new option as we start to doing less Sports Biz Zooms, as everyone's starting to return to normal, is I'm giving the option for Patreon subscribers to listen into a live podcast. So with Riverside FM, I'm recording the podcasts remotely, and it gives a little audience option. So you can sit there and listen and watch the podcast effectively live when it is recorded. So you'll be, as a Patreon subscriber, I'll be sending out calendar notifications when I've got scheduled guests, and you can tune in and listen in And who knows, we might even be able to figure out a way to do live talkback, live callers. But for now, we'll give you the option to live listen. You can go to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon to subscribe and support. Here is my chat with the CEO of the Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment Group, Scott O'Neill. Very happy to welcome Scott O'Neill. He's the CEO of Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Scott.
Sean, love you, love your work. Thrilled and humbled to be here today. It's playoff season in the NBA. We have your very own Ben Simmons starring tonight, so life is good and it beats a stick in the eye, as I like to say.
Exactly. Melbourne's own Ben Simmons. But we'll talk about NBA and the playoffs a little bit later. It's taken us a while to get to this, and thank you for Lara for organising it. I think last time I was in Philadelphia, you were in China, and then the next time I went to come to Philadelphia, this thing called a virus came involved. So good to catch up, and appreciate doing so in the middle of the NBA season. As I normally start things, how did you get your start in the world of sports?
You know, I went to a school called Villanova University in Pennsylvania, about 2 hours south of New York, and had an internship with a company called Advantage International, which at the time, this is in 1991, was the third largest sports marketing company in the world. It's now Octagon.
Yep.
I had a wonderful experience there. It was the first time in my life I didn't have a labor job where I was, doing construction or landscaping or working at a farmer's market and all that kind of stuff. So it was the first time I walked in and people were happy. They were young and good looking and dressed smart, and they seemed to love their work. And so I was immediately bitten by the bug and graduated a year later and got hired as a marketing assistant for the New Jersey Nets, now Brooklyn Nets.
Yep.
Which was not a very kind of well thought of franchise, but I couldn't ask for a better place to get a start in my career. And
so your career took you to, in that NBA scene. Then you ended up at the actual NBA at Teambo on the league side. What was it like working at the NBA at that time? Well, I then went on to the Philadelphia Eagles, then business school, and then as a whole kind of mess to get the NBA. I actually was running a company called Hoops TV, which was a .com bust for me. And so I went from there to the NBA league office. And that's when, I guess if you look for an inflection point in my career, that would be it. I mean, I got to work for the legendary commissioner, David Stern, the current commissioner, Adam Silver, and Bernie Mullen, a dear friend who went on to run the Atlanta Hawks and Thrashers. And I got to work alongside Bill Sutton, who's the legendary kind of sports marketing professor of the world. Yep.
So for me, what an incredible opportunity to learn and grow from some of the best people in the business. I will say the NBA, it's different. It's big. It's like government. I mean, it is big. I'd only worked for teams and small organizations. And I finally found myself, talking to lawyers and HR people and finance people. And I just hadn't had that type of experience before. But what I loved most was just being out. I mean, I loved the team business. And Teambo, as you mentioned, team marketing and business operations, our role was to create a best practices library and experience for the teams on behalf of the league. So think of it as a PhD in sports marketing. I mean, I couldn't have been happier learning. I mean, learning from some of the all-time greats, Tom Wilson in Detroit, Eric Woolworth in Miami, Rick Welts, and at time for the Phoenix Suns, Steve Schonwald at the Bulls. I mean, you're Len Komoroski at the Cavaliers. I mean, you're talking the elite guys in sports, and I got to sit by their side, walk through, do an analysis of their organization, figure out what they were doing well, what they could maybe borrow from somebody else, and what they were doing that was so well that we would pass on to other teams. So it was an incredible experience. I was there for almost 8 years. At some point, I got promoted to run the group, which was really humbling. So an incredible experience. Love the league, love the game of basketball. It's given me so many things in my life, not only a career, but also many of my friends. My wife and I met at the job. So it's been a lifelong pursuit and a lifelong love.
I've been lucky enough to talk to a bunch of people at Teambo, and it's definitely a model like that. I say steal with pride a lot, and I think the Teambo does that, finding it from different markets. But it is a model that other leagues, like even here in Australia, have tried to model on how they can, rising tides lift all boats. So from there and getting that league view and being able to stand alongside different teams and learn how the different operations and the marketing goes from a team point of view. Your next step in your career was to go to the Madison Square Garden as president. What was
the Mecca?
The Mecca, and
Mecca
lucky
here.
enough to have gone to a couple of games there myself. What was the change of mindset going from collegial, working with multiple teams, to having that single focus of a venue and the teams around it?
Everything I loved about the NBA league office, the learning, the opportunity, the grand scale. I was ready at that point in my life. I believe I was 38 years old. I was ready to run something. I wanted more accountability. I wanted P&L responsibility. At least my reputation, my strength became building culture, hiring, developing, retaining talent. And I wanted to get closer to it. I love the consulting business. It was fun, but I wanted to get my hands dirty and operate again. And so I went to go see the commissioner, and I told him what I wanted. I said, I wanted a big city. I want to turn around. And if something comes up, I'd love to be considered. And he said, how about New York? And as a kid who grew up in New York, I can't tell you what that was like. I mean, it was kind of a dream come true to go work at the world's most famous arena at a time where we spun the company out and became a separately traded public company, and then put over $1 billion into the arena to keep it the world's most famous arena. Yep. We were taking on 2 turnarounds on the ice and on the court with the Knicks and Rangers, which was incredible. Working with the legendary Glenn Sather and the legendary Donnie Walsh on the Knicks side. I mean, I honestly, I couldn't have had a more incredible experience. We were fortunate enough to build a team that would go on to do some of the biggest deals in the history of our industry. And I can't possibly articulate how much I learned, how grateful I am to have that experience, and what a fun run. It was short, but it was fun. So that was a 4-year run.
It was.
Yeah.
Which brings you, to the current day, which has the roles have evolved at the 76ers and the Devils, and now CEO of the group Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment. The role itself now at Harris Blitzer, you've got such a diverse group of teams and venues and properties. What does that role both offer you, both from an opportunities and a challenges point of view?
Well, first off, I mean, I love it here. They're wonderful people. We've grown this business from when I just got here in 2013. It was the Philadelphia 76ers as a tenant in the Wells Fargo Center. This was a team that had just made one of the worst trades in NBA history, had 2 draft picks over the next first-round draft picks in the next 5 years. Every measure of how we measure business, ticket sales, sponsorship, ratings, brand affinity, all at the bottom of the league. And as my dad famously said to me on the phone, son, even you can't fall off of this floor. But from there, we went on, and we've built we've grown the business about just over 6 times. The business is now valued, at least publicly, about $2.7 billion. When I walked in, I think it was about 350, 360. So that's fun. We bought the Devils and the Prudential Center, one of the top 10 book buildings in America, which and the Devils, of course, of the National Hockey League. We bought an esports team, built a new training complex, built a real estate business, a venture business, a $50 million venture fund, built an innovation lab, a Grammy museum. Acquired a couple theaters. I mean, there's really no limit to what we can do and will do with this platform.
So that's a large group, and obviously you have a talented team that's running all of those different parts. How do you, from a leadership point of view, oversee everything, but then also empower the people that are running those different properties and venues? Everybody has something that they're really good at, and we all have things that we're not very good at. My one discernible skill is recruiting, acquiring, developing, and retaining talent. And if you look at this team, it's more of a constellation of stars. I mean, I spend my time, about a third of my time on culture and people, about a third of my time on growth, and a third of my time with existing and new clients. I mean, that's how I allocate my time.
but generally I should put an allocation there for just getting out of the way. I mean, it's elite operators from top to bottom. I'd put the sales and marketing machine and communications machine up against anybody in the world. So we're very proud of the culture we have, the people I get to work with, put a bright light in my day every day. And we're all setting out. It's hard to explain, but this group, I feel like we just walk in here with a can-do attitude, and there's no mountain we can't climb. And there's no work that's too small for us to do, and yet there are no dreams too big for us to dream. And to have and be part of a culture and an organization like that is pretty wonderful.
One of the challenges of a sports business, and you touched on before, with the 76ers and the trusted process, when things aren't going right on the court or on the ice or on the rift, there's a lot of pressure, even if it is external from media and fans on that affects the business side. How do you balance? Because the business has to keep going regardless, whether you win or lose, a regular season game or a playoff game. The business of sport and the business of your different teams has to go on. How do you balance the management of a high performance team, which all of the teams are, with the business side of we've got to still get cheeks in the seats, we've got to get sponsors on board, we've got to make sure they're happy. How do you balance that with your teams and with your staff?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about with the Sixers, we hadn't won 50 games in about 15 years when I arrived. We're fortunate enough to have been 50-win team last 4 years, but we talked about since day one walking in the door, let's be 50-win ready. And that's, of course, 50 out of 82 games, which is kind of the mark of a good season. Not a great season, but a good season. And so we talked about just being 50-win ready. So that was a mentality we took with us. And on the ice in hockey, we talk about being 90-point ready, which is effectively the same level, but for the National Hockey League.
Yep.
And this is a group that has outperformed and outkicked our coverage multiple times. I mean, we won 10 win. We had 10 out of 20 games. 10 wins out of an 82-game season, and our business actually increased that year. And so this is a group that is passionate. They get after it. We have the resources. We have one of the largest ticket sales staffs in the world still, and we believe it. If you can keep this machine together, if you can effectively use data, if you can create the kind of content that continues to grow a fan base, and you create an environment at work that's fun and challenging to work, we think good things will happen, and they have.
And so the last 15 months, a lot of challenges in the world, not just in sports business. How has Harris Blitzer Group and the teams, how have they adapted over the last 15 months?
Yeah, it's been quite a battle, to be honest. We've lost more money than is reasonable. I think a lot of us have. We're very fortunate. We have an incredible board of directors. We're very well heeled. We don't have a liquidity crisis. I mean, we didn't have the panic that some of my peers had in their organizations. We didn't have to run for cover. We didn't have to scramble for banks. We had, kind of prepared ourselves very well the previous 5 years, which is very fortunate. And that allowed us, quite frankly, not to have some of the mass layoffs we saw around the sports world. And we were able to protect our talent. And so as I look forward to 21-22, our numbers are actually projecting better than our 19-20 pre-COVID numbers. So it's been a V-like recovery, and I don't think it's an accident, to be honest with you. I think this group we definitely struggled. We definitely went through our bouts of anxiety and depression and frustration and isolation and difficulty. Some of us lost, family members and neighbors and friends and partners and all that stuff, which is awful. But and we spent a lot of time talking about mental health and wellness as a group and how we help each other and how we connect with each other and how we need to be more aware to make sure that the world's a better place. So I think all in all, as miserable as it was, I think we came out on the other side better, stronger, and faster.
And now you're starting to see some of the rewards that we do have in the world of sport when you can walk into a stadium and hear people cheering and see some of those moments when, Joel Embiid actually starts waving to a crowd that's actually there. There's some of the rewards you get working in the world of sport. It must be good to start seeing fans starting to return to stadiums.
It's Sean, it's I think you hit the nail on the head. it's enough to put chills on the back of your spine. It's been a long road. I mean, I was in the bubble in Orlando at a game and was the only fan. I mean, that's to go from that to walking into an arena that is so loud, it almost goes deafening. It's like deafening loudness. And to see the players respond and the energy just buzzing through the stands, it's been pretty special. It really solidifies what our purpose is in this business. Our purpose, our why, effectively, is to bring communities together, is to create connection, is to give us escapism. It's exactly what it's meant to be. And if nothing else, we've kind of come out the other side more than anything else, understanding that we have purpose, like we're here to help and bring this community back to heal.
You do talk about connection in the book and personal connection and having connection with your staff. What were some of the ways that you worked on that in a work from home Zoom world? Like normally that's the stuff of water coolers, and that's the stuff of morning teas or drinks on a Friday afternoon or going to a game. How were you able to manufacture it and, I guess, do that work on people and culture over the last 15 months?
Well, we've had a good peek behind the curtain. I've seen folks in their bathrobes and their kids and their dogs and their cats. And I know what their living rooms look like, their family rooms, their bedrooms, their dens. They're downstairs. I have a bunch of my friends taking calls from the car because they have little kids in their house. And my kids are older. I long for those days, man, when you just can't escape it. So I think, that's provided an opportunity for us to truly appreciate each other and get to know each other on a different level. I think the second thing we've done is my exec team. For the first 3 or 4 months, we're meeting every morning, and then we spread it out to a couple times a week. And each of us had an opportunity. There were about 15 people on the call, and every morning we were given an exercise to do, and that exercise was about. It could be as simple as send me a photo of your happiest place. Tell me what you love most in this business. Tell me about a time that you overcame a tremendous challenge. Some people added podcasts to listen to, or articles to read, or books to take a look at, and it became an incredible opportunity for mental health for each of us to kind of think again and stop worrying, and take the masks off because we were at home and we could do it. We could see each other's faces, and I think, and then it also added content for our leaders and our managers to use with their teams. So it was a wonderful experience in terms of and getting tested and challenged by all these incredible exercises. I think that's the one thing that will stand out the most to me.
Do you think some of that personal connection and having that seep into in real life meetings when they start returning in boardrooms and meeting rooms, do you think some of that connection will stick and will actually strengthen the culture?
Sean, I talk about that and be where your feet are. I mean, I don't think we have a choice. I'd be honest with you. It's been rough. And yes, we've had sand kicked in our face repeatedly. But we've also had some wonderful experiences. The family dinner is back, connection at home and conversations with our partners and our friends and our family, like real conversations that aren't just, hey, how you doing? Fine. Yep. We've had a policy in our organization for several years that when you walk into a conference room, you turn your phone in. Yep. And it's for that very reason, because what's happening in these meetings where I'm in is you walk in and everybody's just leaning down on their phone. I don't know what they're doing, checking TikTok videos or scrolling through Twitter or checking the scores from last night. But I'd much rather see value in me saying, hey, Sean, I heard your daughter had a game last night. How'd it go? Or, hey, you were at a wedding this weekend. Where was it? Tell me about it. I think that's the human connection, the human touch you were mentioning. I really think we have to be better and do better. And whether that's us just being aware, because we're still going to take a lot of these Zoom calls. Yep. And when we take them, there's going to be somebody, and she's going to have her video off for 3 days in a row. And some light bulb has to go on and say, okay, Jean had her video off. Let me check in with her. Or somebody has their voicemail box full, or, maybe they haven't responded to a text or haven't showed up for a meeting. It's this is on us, man. This is on me and you and anybody who's listening right now to help each other. Be aware. That's what this should give us, COVID. This should give us a heightened sense of self and a heightened sense of awareness. And the sense of self is, hey, raise my hand. I need help. The heightened sense of awareness is my bucket is full. Who can I help and connect with? And for 60 seconds a day, if you just reach out to 2 people a day and send them a text and say, hey, Mom, I love you. You're amazing. I remember when you took me to Disney World. It was incredible. I'll never forget. Everything I owe in my life is to you. That note to your mother, there's no words, right? Why can't we take that to our friends at work? Why can't we take that to a former boss or a mentor or a teacher or a coach? Like we have to create these connections. They don't happen by accident, and we have to stop waiting for other people to do the work. We have to be the ones to initiate, go and connect the world.
It's terrific advice. So this is where I'll tell people to pause the podcast, go send that message, and come back and send a tweet to both Scott and I and say how it went. We'll see how that goes. So what inspired you to write a book? Be Where Your Feet Are.
Sean, I spend my days these days. I just turned 50 last year, and I spend my days, a lot of days, thinking about where do I want to make my mark? What is my why all about? Why am I popping out of bed so fast in the morning? And the answer is pretty clearly, like I think that I want to play a role in helping to develop this next generation of great leaders in this business, and to do that, I have a wonderful platform to do it. And I leveraged this opportunity with a book because this is a raw, unadulterated look behind the curtains. This is not a pat yourself on the back look. This is, hey, I got fired. Hey, I lost my job. Hey, my best friend took his whole life. Hey, I'm really struggling with my daughter. Hey, I need to do a better job with my wife connecting. Like this is the journey of life, because that line between work and home and work is essentially gone now.
Yep.
And so this is hopefully a toolbox and a toolkit for those listening to live a more purposeful, driven life. And if I can play a role in just one person's life, I'll consider this a success.
Terrific. One of those things in the toolbox you talk about is the leadership constitution. It's one of the tools you talk about. What is it, and how did it develop? How did you get to that point of leadership constitution?
Yeah. I was in my brother Michael runs a healthcare tech company in Washington, D.C., and I was in his office and I saw it behind his desk. And I was like, what the heck is this? And he said, hey, you have to call my coach, Rich Hill of Gabriel Consulting out of Chicago, Illinois, which I did. I had him come in. And the leadership constitution answers two core questions. I declare that I am, ... and you can count on me to be, ... And you have to write yours. Mine is, I don't have it in front of me, but I can tell you it's, I'm a leader of leaders. I'll give the shirt off my back to a perfect stranger, and anything, anytime to a friend. I will push you, nudge you, love you, even when you don't want to be pushed, don't want to be loved, and don't want to be hugged. I raise the bar to an unreasonable level, and I will work with you. I will dig in with you, and I will take hits for losses and give credit for wins. That's effectively what I'm declaring who I am. I read that every morning. You know what it does? It just reinforces to my core self of who my core commitments to myself and to the world, and put some good kind of subconscious energy into your mind. And while I'd advocate everybody take the time and write their leadership constitution, if you want to cheat it, write down 15 things you want to be in the world. Not who you aspire to be, but who you are at your core, and read them out loud. And I know it's uncomfortable reading stuff out loud. You feel kind of awkward. But I will tell you, man, the way the brain works is you say something and it goes into your subconscious and helps your brain think. And we have, why not, Sean, why not you? Why not me? Like I've seen and read about some of the greats of all time in the world. And I always think when I talk to young people, I say, why not you? You're smart. You'll work hard. The only thing you're missing is a big dream and the discipline to create a plan and go get it. And I think for all of us, it starts with like figuring out who we are. Like who we are at our best self. And that's what a leadership constitution provides.
And it gives you that tool to work on your leadership like a muscle. It's not read a book, write it down, and I'm good. It's a daily task of living it and understanding it. That's the key piece for you.
That's right. Yes. It's that reinforcement, the repetition and reinforcement.
So a lot of upcoming sports executives may grab your book to gain insight into entering the world of sports business, try to follow your lead, see the career that you've had. What advice would you give to, potentially graduates or young people trying to get into the world of sports business? It's a very different world to the one that you entered, or the one that I entered 12 years ago, coming off COVID and hopefully a recovering business, and indicators are that things will bounce back, but it's a very different business. What's some of your advice to people trying to get into the world of sports business?
Well, I would say that if you can sell or have an interest in sales, in particular tickets, go do it, man. Just get after it. Like, it's great training. If you find out 2 years later you don't want to do this anymore, that's okay. You'll have some of the best sales training in the world. So I would say if you can sell, you will have a job, you will find a place. Be persistent. Be creative. I wonder, I was talking to a young man. I play pickup basketball with him every Saturday, and he had an interview in our organization. And they said, I said, hey, just check in with me. Let me know how it went. He sent me a note back. Hey, Scott, I went this way. I said, okay, did you follow up? He said, yeah, I sent a text. And I said, Joey, that's wonderful. Is there anything creative that you heard in that interview that you could send to this manager to let her know that you were listening, that you're creative, and that you'll go the extra mile? Because it's not just a thank you text, and it's not just a thank you card. Be different, like stand out. Like, because if you stand out in the interview and your follow-up from your interview, that gives me, the hiring manager, a pretty good indication of what type of person I'm hiring.
Yeah, and I did notice the quote on the cover of your book, Be Where Your Feet Are, is from Angela Duckworth. So showing a lot of grit and resilience in the world of sport. I'm a big fan of what Angela's done, and I think, doing that follow-up and being there and being persistent and being resilient. I think everyone in the world of sports has been resilient over the past 15 months, but really over the past 20 years. You've got to be able to ride with the bumps.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think of the opportunities that I had in my life. I mean, when I left the New Jersey Nets to go to the Philadelphia Eagles, I had called down there over 50 times to try to get an interview. 50. Yep. And so you think about it, it's like, but we're self-conscious. So we call when we're young. We call once and we think like we're good. Or we call once and the person says, I'll get back to you, and they don't. And you're like, oh, they must have forgot about me. It's like, invest in your future. Like, commit to your future. Like, be what you want to be. Like, demonstrate the types of behaviors that a boss would be proud to have you there and thrive.
Well, Scott, I know you've got a playoff game to get to go see your beloved 76ers. I'm looking forward to tuning in and seeing Melbourne's own Ben Simmons. As I said pre-interview, I used to watch his dad play for the Melbourne Tigers many, many years ago. So looking forward to seeing that game. I want to finish with the Sports Geek closing five. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended? I
do. It was New York Knicks versus New Jersey Nets at Madison Square Garden. We sat up so high, the game was merely a rumor, but something I'll never forget.
It is. Pretty much you can sit anywhere at Madison Square Garden, and it is an experience. So, I've been lucky enough to go a couple of times, and, it doesn't matter. It's as much the atmosphere as what's happening on the court or the ice.
Yeah, it sure is. It's a wonderful, wonderful place, but it was high.
You would have been to a lot of sports events, and the world of food at sports events has evolved very much so in the last 30 years. Do you have a go-to food at a sports event, or a favorite food memory at a sports event?
I have an issue. I have a cookie issue. It's not something I'm very proud of. But typically at this game I'm about to head over to, I try to limit my halftime chocolate chip cookies to 4. Okay. Unfortunately, they're very large. They're large cookies, and so I try to cut it off at 4. But it's a problem, and I try to go one really quick before everybody gets in that halftime room because then they don't see it, and then I tuck the last one out with me as I walk out. So it really looks like I only have 2, but that's my favorite cookie in the world.
Terrific. And have you sampled the 4 and 20 pie? Have you come to love the meat pie that the Australians love?
I feel like I don't want to sound like a shill for my partners. But that feels like breakfast, lunch, and dinner to me.
Well, it is the most common answer of Australian guests. They talk about a pie with sauce. So you're very much welcome over here in Australia. That's not a problem at all.
It's one place I've never been, and it's on my list. And when I come, I can't wait to say hello.
Oh, no, definitely. Happy to host you over here. What's the first app you open in the morning?
My first app, ESPN.
ESPN. Who is you mentioned some terrific names of people you've worked with and colleagues. Who is someone that the podcast listeners should follow, whether they be a colleague, someone that's doing something in the business, or a fellow author?
Paul Rabel. He's a lacrosse star, one of the great lacrosse players in the world. But I love him as an athlete. He's an elite athlete, but I even love him more as a businessman. He has a wonderful podcast. He embodies a lot of the characteristics that I see in successful people. He works unreasonably hard. He's intellectually curious, and he's an extraordinary teammate. And that alone I feel like he's a must follow.
Definitely. I've recommended his podcast. His chat with Steph Curry was really dove deep onto the insights of an athlete. Terrific. Last question. What social media platform is your MVP? And you can answer that personally as yourself, and also potentially from a team point of view. What is the platform that works best for you?
Personally, I'm more LinkedIn guy. Like the cesspool that is Twitter, I spend less and less time on. It just gets a little nasty for me.
It does.
But and Facebook, I just start dating myself, and people ask me if I'm 70 or 80 or 90 years old, which I'm not yet. So LinkedIn is a great way to connect with people. I think the platform is fantastic. The content's terrific, and a good way to track some people down. And I've hired off of there, believe it or not, several times.
Definitely, that's where we first connected, and right. It's ever since Microsoft's acquisition, the content and the connection there has really improved. And from a team's point of view, what's the platform that, from a marketing and effectiveness point of view, is working well for say the 76ers?
Really fortunately is we have a content studio, and we have incredible group of young people that are across every platform. TikTok, of course, has the most growth. Facebook has the most reach. Twitter's the most recent, most kind of here and now. Instagram is a wonderful way. We have some of the best photographers in the world with this organization. So it really depends on, we're wide. We know we've got to create content for the right person, through the right distribution platform at the right time. And we're focused. We think that's the next great kind of platform, if you will, is making sure that we're creating content that you can know our players and feel them personally. We're also, Weibo is a big platform for us as well, of course, in China. So I love each of the platforms. It'd be like picking one of my favorite children.
That's all right. Thank you very much, Scott. On the internet, where's the best place for people to connect with you and say they potentially listen to the podcast?
LinkedIn for sure. At Scott O'Neill.
LinkedIn for sure. We will put the links in the show notes. Please check out Scott's new book, Be Where Your Feet Are. Really do appreciate it. I know you've got a playoff game to go to. Best of luck with the rest of the playoffs. I really do appreciate the time.
Sean, love talking to you. Appreciate you and all your work.
Learn from the Sports Geek Amplify Season 1 cohort. Timo, Vlast, Stellar Algo, Ubi Park, and Zoof. For more, go to sportsgeekamplify.com.
Thanks again to Scott O'Neill, and thanks again to Lara, who helped set up and organise that interview. Chatted with Scott just before one of the NBA playoffs games. Really do appreciate him taking the time. Please send him a tweet, Scott O'Neill, that's O'Neil, and reach out to Scott on LinkedIn. He is very much a savvy networker and connector on LinkedIn, and well worth connecting with. We did discuss there Melbourne's own Ben Simmons. My ties to Ben go back to the Melbourne Tigers days. For those of you who don't know, Ben Simmons' dad played in Melbourne, played for the Melbourne Tigers in the early 90s, winning a title in 93. I've actually got a tie from a Melbourne Tigers ball, a function that was a calico tie that I got all of the 93 Premiership team, championship team to sign. So I've got Dave Simmons' signature, and so Dave Simmons is my connection to Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is the same age as my daughter, so great to see Ben succeeding, getting all defensive team recently, and looking forward to seeing Ben Simmons play for the Boomers in Tokyo. Fingers crossed all of that goes ahead. That's it for this episode. What I wanted to do is to quickly talk a little bit about digital to dollars and how it can help work for you and your team. Digital dollars primarily provides you with a digital review. It actually helps you bring in money. The process, if you haven't heard of it before or listened to the podcast before, is over 5 pillars. Know your audience, know your content, know your distribution, know your value, and know your pitch. And that can be reworked whether you're a league, whether you're a team, whether you're a stadium, whether you're an athlete, coach, or personality, or even whether you're a business that's looking to pitch into the world of sport. The first 3 really work for any business. Know your audience, know your content, know your distribution. That's the pillar for a digital strategy. Who you want to talk to, what's the type of content they're going to like, and what are the platforms that are going to work best for you. That's really starts working with the digital team and your overall digital strategy. The other 2 pillars of know your value and know your pitch are really about the sales, are really about how do you produce content, franchises, and that are attractive to your fans and attractive to your sponsors, and how you go about selling them. So if you're interested in Digital to Dollars, check out digitaldollars.com. Check out the Digital to Dollars podcast where I dive into the 5 pillars if you go into the archive for Sports Geek. But please reach out. Just go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call. Let's book in a time to chat. As always, happy to do the Pick My Brain sessions and love working with podcast listeners. If you haven't, please check out the Sports Geek Amplify series. 5 terrific sports technology companies that are helping sports bounce back. Check them out. Vlast, Timo, Stellar Argo, UbiPark, Zoomph. In the next episode, I'll actually give you a bit of an update of what is happening with all of them and how they're progressing since we last spoke. Until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
We'd love your support on our Patreon campaign. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon. Have you listened to the Sports Geek Amplify series? Go to sportsgeekamplify.com to listen.